Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into this white paper called MLOps, a holistic approach.
Okay.
And, as experts in data science, we already know that deploying machine learning models goes way beyond just like the algorithms of the code.
For sure, for sure.
And so this paper is going to kind of get into those often overlooked aspects of actually operationalizing, putting these models into production.
Right.
One of the things that they say right off the bat is that it's not always the tech that's the problem.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to uncover some of those human-centric factors that can really make or break an ML project.
I'm intrigued. Let's hear it.
So they jump right into this checklist of MLOps failure modes, and they break it down into three categories: people, processes, and platform.
Yeah, makes sense.
And, it's a good reminder that these things are all interconnected. You can't just fix one area and ignore the others.
Right, it's going to be a holistic approach.
Exactly. So I'm curious, from your experience, did any of these specific failure modes stand out to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Like I'm thinking about things like, misaligned success metrics or the challenges of scaling from one model to multiple models in production.
Yeah.
Or even just like the whole struggle of trying to manage ML projects with traditional software development frameworks.
All of the above, honestly. I mean, I've seen how misaligned metrics can just totally derail a project. It's like you're setting off on a trip, but you don't actually know where you're going.
Right.
You might end up building this amazing model, but it's solving the wrong problem entirely.
Totally. And don't even get me started on the scaling challenges.
Ugh, it's a nightmare. What works for one model often just completely falls apart when you try to manage like a whole ecosystem of models.
It's like you said, going from taking care of one little bonsai tree to managing a whole rainforest.
Perfect analogy.
So let's dig into that human element, the people aspect that the paper highlights.
Okay.
What are some of the key takeaways there?
Well, they really emphasize the importance of having well-defined roles within the ML team. And it's not about giving everyone fancy titles. It's about clarity of responsibility.
Right.
You need your data scientists focusing on data exploration, your analytics engineers turning that data into valuable metrics, your ML engineers building and refining those models, and then your MLOps engineers making sure everything runs smoothly in production.
That makes sense.
If those roles get blurred, people get stretched too thin, and that's when things start to fall apart.
Right. It's like trying to build a house, but everyone thinks they're the general contractor.
Haha.
No one specializes in anything, and then you end up with chaos.
Exactly. And the authors make another really interesting point about the limitations of using traditional project management approaches like Agile or Waterfall for ML projects.
Oh,
It's just that the inherent unpredictability of model performance, the constant need for experimentation and iteration, it just doesn't fit neatly into those rigid frameworks.
as someone who's been doing data science for a while, that really resonates. You get those early accuracy gains and you're super excited, but then the real challenge is actually sustaining that improvement over time.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
That's a great way to put it.
They actually reference a study of a Kaggle competition that shows this perfectly. The accuracy gains early on were totally different from the improvements seen after months of work.
Wow.
Yeah, so that unpredictability makes it really difficult to apply those traditional project management techniques, which are designed for more predictable and linear projects.
Right. And on top of that, there's the whole challenge of knowledge sharing.
Oh yeah, that's huge.
ML projects really thrive when insights and learnings and even failures are openly communicated.
Absolutely.
It's not enough for individuals to be experts in their own little silos.
Right.
The paper suggests that using tools like weights and biases reports can actually help a lot with this.
Interesting.
It allows teams to collaborate and learn from each other much more effectively.
Yeah, I can see how that would be super valuable. A free flow of information can help teams avoid pitfalls and speed up progress significantly.
Definitely.
It's like they say, a problem shared is a problem halved.
I like that. All right, so we've talked about the people involved, but what about the processes themselves?
Yeah, let's dive into that next.
The paper outlines a pretty clear ML project lifecycle and is broken down into 4 key stages.
Okay, I'm listening.
So it all starts with scoping and opportunity sizing,
Yeah.
and they really emphasize that you need to go beyond just the technical feasibility of a project.
Makes sense.
You have to dig into the real business value. Are you building the right tool for the job?
I see what you mean. You could have a technically brilliant solution, but if it doesn't solve an actual problem or deliver tangible benefits to the business, then what's the point?
Exactly. And once that scope is clear, then you move on to the next stage, which
Right.
is Data discovery and validation.
Got it.
It's all about understanding the data you're working with and, crucially, making sure it's high quality.
Right, garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly. And to ensure that quality, they mention things like type checking, making sure your data is formatted correctly, examining the data's distributions, and looking for any potential biases that could skew your results. Then we get to what many consider the heart of the process, which is model development and evaluation.
Okay.
This is where that iterative cycle really kicks in, building baselines, experimenting with different models and architectures, and constantly evaluating performance.
Right.
And they emphasize that it's really important to engage with subject matter experts throughout this whole process.
Oh, for sure. Their domain expertise can be invaluable for making sure the model is actually aligned with real-world constraints and requirements.
Totally. And they also highlight the need for tools that allow for rapid iteration and collaboration. As a data scientist yourself, I'm sure you can relate to how frustrating it can be to deal with slow feedback loops or having to manually manage experiments.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. Having tools that streamline those processes can be a complete game changer.
For sure. So the last stage in this process that they highlight is governance.
Interesting.
Which is becoming more and more important as we see AI and ML being deployed in increasingly sensitive domains.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to make sure that our models are fair and transparent, especially in today's world.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, so we've covered the people and the processes pretty thoroughly.
We have. So now let's move on to the ML platform itself.
Okay, bring it on.
The paper breaks it down into a few key areas: framework flexibility, the ops tools that are available, and some broader considerations for choosing the right tools.
Makes sense.
Now, as an expert, you know how important it is to not be locked into any specific technology.
Oh, absolutely.
The platform should support the tools and frameworks that data scientists are most comfortable and productive with.
Right. It shouldn't dictate how they have to work.
Exactly. Flexibility is key. But where things get really interesting is in the area of the ops tools. This is where we start moving beyond those manual processes and embracing automation and efficiency.
Okay, I'm all for that.
Yeah. I think any data scientist who's spent hours manually tracking experiments or trying to wrangle data pipelines can really appreciate the value of good ops tooling.
Oh, absolutely. It can save you so much time and headache.
For sure. And with so many tools available in the MLOps landscape these days, how do you even know where to start?
Right. It can be overwhelming.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, the paper offers some good guidance. They emphasize that it's crucial to make sure your platform aligns with your team's skill sets.
Okay, that makes sense.
You don't want to introduce tools that require a huge learning curve or that clash with the way your team already works.
Right. It's about finding that balance between adopting new technology and making sure the transition is smooth for the team.
Exactly. And they also talk about finding the right level of abstraction. Some data scientists might prefer to have that low-level control over their infrastructure.
Yeah.
While others might benefit more from high-level abstractions that simplify infrastructure management.
That's a good point. Different teams have different needs and preferences.
Absolutely. And finally, they touch upon this classic dilemma of build versus buy.
Oh, yeah, the age-old question.
Should you invest in developing custom tools in-house or leverage existing solutions?
It's a tough one.
It really depends on your specific situation. The business value you're trying to achieve, the total cost of ownership, the long-term maintenance and scalability of the solution.
Lots of factors to consider.
Totally.
Yeah.
And they do point out that even if you decide to go with existing tools, there's probably still going to be some level of customization or integration needed.
Right. It's rare to find a perfect plug-and-play solution.
It's more like putting together a puzzle, finding the right pieces, and figuring out how they all fit together.
Love that analogy.
Now, of course, this white paper was written by Weights and Biases, so they do highlight how their platform addresses many of these challenges.
Makes sense.
But even putting aside any promotional aspects, what are some of the key functionalities that they emphasize that, really align with the principles we've been discussing?
Well, it seems like their platform really focuses on observability and iteration speed within the ML workflow.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense. You want data scientists and ML engineers to have deep visibility into the experiments, the models, the data.
Definitely. So we can actually understand what's happening.
Exactly. Without that visibility, debugging optimization, even just understanding the reasons behind a model's performance becomes incredibly difficult.
It's like trying to fix a car engine without being able to open the hood. You're just guessing at that point.
Haha, perfect analogy. So they highlight features like experiment tracking, which lets you log all your parameters, code versions, results,
Makes sense.
which makes it much easier to reproduce and analyze your experiments.
Yep.
Then there's dataset and model versioning, which is essential for keeping track of how your models and data evolve over time.
Right.
And of course, the ability to visualize and analyze results in a collaborative environment so teams can easily share insights and learn from each other.
Yeah, collaboration is key.
It's all about giving data scientists the tools they need to be detectives,
I like that.
to really understand not just what's happening, but why it's happening.
That's a great way to put it. And the paper also mentions tracking the lineage of your data in code,
Oh, yeah, that's a crucial one.
creating an audit trail for your ML projects.
That's essential for transparency and reproducibility.
Mm-hmm.
If a problem comes up, you can trace it back to its source, understand the decisions that were made along the way, and ensure that the model's behavior can be explained and justified. That level of transparency is also key for model governance and for building trust in the systems that we're creating.
Transparency is so important, especially in today's world, where AI is being used in so many different aspects of our lives.
Absolutely.
Now, they also seem to emphasize that their platform integrates with other tools rather than trying to be a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah, that stood out to me as well. Their platform seems designed to work seamlessly with existing workflows and popular tools like Databricks, Metaflow, Kubeflow, even CI/CD systems like GitHub Actions.
Oh, wow.
It's more about complementing the existing infrastructure, not replacing it.
So it sounds like they're going for a more collaborative ecosystem approach.
Exactly. They recognize that different organizations have different needs and preferences.
That makes sense.
Of course, we'd need to dig deeper to see if their platform actually lives up to all these claims.
Right.
But I do think this white paper does a great job of laying out the fundamental challenges of MLOps and providing some really valuable considerations for how to address them.
For sure. I think the key takeaway here is this emphasis on a holistic approach. People, processes, platforms. It's about empowering teams to build and deploy ML models that deliver real business value while also addressing those crucial ethical considerations.
Absolutely. And in a field as dynamic as ML, it's also about fostering a culture of continuous learning and adaptation.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The tools and techniques and even the challenges themselves are constantly evolving.
So how do we stay ahead of the curve?
It's about cultivating that insatiable curiosity that drew us to data science in the first place. Actively seeking out new knowledge, exploring different perspectives, experimenting with new tools, constantly challenging our assumptions.
Right. And connecting with the wider ML community, attending conferences, reading papers, participating in online forums. All of that contributes to our growth and understanding.
It's about recognizing that we're all on this journey together, learning from each other's experiences, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
That's a great way to put it. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this final thought. This holistic approach, focusing on people, processes, platforms, it can be applied not just to our technical work, but also to our personal and professional growth.
Interesting.
Define your goals, design your processes, find the tools and resources that support you, and never stop learning and iterating. That's really the essence of success in any field, especially one as dynamic as ML.
Couldn't agree more. It's been a fantastic discussion. I hope this deep dive has provided some valuable insights to help you navigate the ever-evolving world of MLOps.
Thanks for joining us and keep pushing those boundaries.
Always.
So we talked about the people side of things, but what about the processes themselves?
Yeah, let's dive into that. The processes that can really make or break an ML project.
They lay out like a really clear project lifecycle, breaking it down into these 4 main stages.
Okay.
And it all starts with scoping and opportunity sizing. And they emphasize going beyond just the technical feasibility. You have to look at the business value. Are you building the right tool for the job?
Yeah, that's so important. I've seen so many projects where the team gets caught up in the technical details and they forget to ask themselves, is this actually solving a real problem?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once you have a clear scope, then you move on to the next stage, which is data discovery and validation.
Right.
It's all about understanding the data and making sure it's high quality.
Right. You got to make sure you're not feeding garbage into your models.
Exactly. They mention things like type checking, examining the data's distribution, looking for any potential biases that could mess up your results.
Oh, yeah. Bias detection is huge these days.
It's becoming more and more important. And then we get to what many consider the heart of the process, model development and evaluation.
Okay.
This is where it gets really iterative. You're building baselines, experimenting with different models and architectures, and constantly evaluating the performance.
The fun part.
And they stress the importance of working with subject matter experts throughout this whole process.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah,
Their expertise can be so valuable for making sure the model is aligned with the real world.
definitely. And they also talk about the need for tools that enable rapid iteration and collaboration.
Oh, yeah, that's essential, especially when you have a large team working on a project.
It can be such a pain to deal with slow feedback loops or to have to manage experiments manually.
Ugh, I've been there.
The right tools can really make a huge difference. And then the final stage in this life cycle is governance,
Governance.
which is becoming super important with AI and ML being used in more and more sensitive areas.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a responsibility to make sure that our models are fair and transparent.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, so we've covered the people and the processes.
Yeah, we're making good progress.
So now let's shift gears and talk about the ML platform itself.
Okay, let's hear it.
They break it down into a few key parts: framework flexibility, the operations tools, and some broader considerations for choosing the right tools for your team.
Sounds good.
And as an expert, you know how important it is to not get locked into a specific technology.
Oh, for sure.
The platform should support the tools and frameworks that your data scientists are most comfortable and productive with.
Right. It shouldn't force them to use something they don't like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But where things get really interesting is the ops tools.
Okay.
This is where we move beyond those manual processes and embrace automation and efficiency.
Sign me up.
Any data scientist who spent hours manually tracking experiments or wrangling data pipelines can appreciate some good ops tooling.
Preach. It can save you so much time and frustration.
It's a game changer. But with so many different MLOps tools out there these days, it can be tough to know where to even start.
Right. It's a crowded market.
The paper offers some good advice. They emphasize that it's super important to align your platform with your team's existing skill sets.
That makes sense.
You don't want to introduce tools that require a steep learning curve or that disrupt their current workflows.
It's all about finding that sweet spot, adopting new tech while still ensuring a smooth transition for the team.
Exactly. They also talk about finding that right level of abstraction.
Okay.
Some data scientists like to have that low-level control over the infrastructure, while others might prefer high-level abstractions that simplify infrastructure management.
Different strokes for different folks.
Absolutely. And finally, they touch upon this classic dilemma: build versus buy.
The eternal struggle.
Should you build your own custom tools in-house or go with existing solutions? There's no right answer. It really depends on your specific needs and circumstances.
Yeah, you have to weigh the pros and cons carefully.
The business value you're targeting, total cost of ownership, long-term maintenance scalability, it all comes into play.
So many factors to consider.
And they do make the point that even if you decide to go with existing tools, you'll probably still need to do some level of customization or integration to make them fit into your environment.
Yeah, it's rarely a simple plug-and-play situation.
It's more like putting together a puzzle, finding the right pieces, and figuring out how they all fit together.
I like that analogy.
Now, of course, this white paper was written by Weights and Biases, so naturally they highlight how their platform addresses a lot of these challenges.
Understandable.
But setting aside the marketing stuff for a moment, what are some of the key functionalities they talk about that really align with the principles we've been discussing?
Well, one thing that stood out to me is their focus on observability and iteration speed.
Yeah.
Giving data scientists and ML engineers deep visibility into their experiments, models, and data.
So we can really understand what's going on under the hood.
Exactly. Without that visibility, debugging and optimization become so much harder.
It's like trying to diagnose a car problem without being able to see the engine.
Right. So they highlight things like experiment tracking, which allows you to log all your parameters, code versions, results, and stuff.
Okay.
Which makes it way easier to reproduce and analyze your experiments. And then there's data set and model versioning, which is crucial for tracking how things evolve over time.
Right.
And of course, they emphasize the importance of being able to visualize and analyze results in a collaborative environment.
So teams can work together more effectively.
Exactly. It's about giving data scientists the tools they need to really dig in and understand not just what's happening, but why it's happening.
So they can be like data detectives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the paper also mentions tracking the lineage of your data and code.
Oh yeah, that's important.
Creating that audit trail for your ML projects.
To ensure transparency and accountability.
Exactly. If there's ever an issue, you can trace it back to the source, understand the decisions that were made, and make sure that everything is documented and justified.
And that transparency is crucial for building trust in these systems as well.
Absolutely. Especially as AI becomes more and more integrated into our lives.
Now, another thing that stood out to me is that they seem to emphasize integration with other tools rather than trying to be this all-encompassing solution.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Their platform seems designed to work seamlessly with other popular tools like Databricks, Metaflow, Kubeflow, even CI/CD systems like GitHub Actions.
It's more about complementing the existing ecosystem rather than replacing it.
Exactly. They understand that different organizations have different needs and preferences.
Makes sense.
Now, obviously, we'd have to take a closer look to see if their platform really delivers on all these promises.
Right.
But I do think this white paper lays out the core challenges of MLOps really effectively and provides some valuable food for thought.
Yeah, it's a great framework for thinking about how to operationalize machine learning.
And the main takeaway for me is that it really emphasizes the importance of a holistic approach,
Right.
considering the people, the processes, and the platform as a whole.
It's not just about technology.
Exactly. It's about empowering teams to build and deploy ML models that deliver real business value while also being mindful of the ethical implications.
And in a field as fast-paced as ML, we also need to foster a culture of continuous learning and adaptation.
The tools, techniques, even the challenges themselves are constantly evolving.
So how do we keep up?
It's about staying curious, actively seeking out new knowledge and challenging our assumptions.
Right. And connecting with the broader ML community, attending conferences, reading papers, participating in online discussions.
It's all about learning from each other and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's about giving those data scientists the tools to really be like detectives, to understand not just what, but why things are happening.
Exactly. And they highlight features like experiment tracking, which lets you log all those parameters and code versions and results, so you can easily reproduce and analyze experiments. Then there's dataset and model versioning, which is super important for tracking how your models and data evolve over time. And of course, you need the ability to visualize and analyze those results in a way that's collaborative so the team can share insights and learn from each other's work.
Right. It's all about making that process as smooth as possible.
Exactly. And the paper also mentions tracking the lineage of data and code,
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
creating an audit trail for your ML projects.
So you can trace back, where things came from.
Exactly. It's essential for transparency and reproducibility. If an issue comes up, you can trace it back to the source, figure out what decisions were made along the way, and make sure the model's behavior is explainable and justifiable.
And that level of transparency is also crucial for things like model governance
Oh, absolutely.
and building trust in the systems we're creating.
Especially as AI becomes more integrated into our lives. Transparency is more important than ever.
Couldn't agree more. Now, one thing that I found interesting is that they seem to emphasize integration with other tools
Yeah.
rather than trying to be this like monolithic solution.
Yeah, that stood out to me too. It seems like their platform is designed to integrate with existing workflows and popular tools.
Okay.
Things like Databricks, Metaflow, Kubeflow, even CI/CD systems like GitHub Actions.
Oh.
It's more about complementing the existing infrastructure, not replacing it.
Right. It's a more collaborative approach.
They recognize that different organizations have different needs and preferences, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
For sure. Now, obviously, we need to dig deeper to see if their platform actually lives up to all these claims.
Of course.
But I think this white paper does a really good job of outlining the fundamental challenges of MLOps and providing some valuable considerations for how to address them.
It's a great starting point for anyone looking to improve their MLOps practices.
Definitely. And I think the key takeaway for me is this emphasis on a holistic approach. Thinking about the people, the processes, and the platform all together.
It's not just about the tech, it's about the people and the processes too.
Exactly. And ultimately, it's about empowering teams to build and deploy ML models that deliver real business value while also addressing those ethical considerations.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And in a field as dynamic as ML, it's also about fostering that culture of continuous learning and adaptation.
Right, because things are constantly changing.
Exactly. The tools, the techniques, even the challenges themselves are always evolving.
So how do we stay ahead of the curve?
Well, I think it starts with curiosity, constantly seeking out new knowledge, exploring different perspectives, and challenging our assumptions.
And being open to new ideas.
Exactly. And it's also about connecting with the broader ML community, attending conferences, reading papers, participating in online discussions.
Sharing our knowledge and learning from each other.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together. We can achieve so much more when we collaborate and learn from each other's experiences.
That's a great point. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Mm.
This holistic approach, focusing on the people, the processes, and the platform, it's not just for our technical work.
Oh, I like that.
We can apply it to our personal and professional growth as well.
That's a really interesting perspective.
Define your goals, design your processes, find the tools and resources that support you, and never stop learning and iterating.
I love that. It's all about continuous improvement.
Exactly. And that's really the key to success in any field, but especially in one as dynamic and fast-paced as machine learning.
Well said. It's been a pleasure chatting with you about this. It's such an important topic, and I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
I agree. Thanks for joining us today, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with ML.
Always.